Okay, no audio is there. I hope that there will be audio now. Am I audible to all of you? Okay, that's great. Okay, so tomorrow we have discussed about this head and neck portion, in which we have in the last talked about the tongue and the palatine tonsil. Okay, in the tongue the nerve supply is very important, as we have discussed that we have discussed about its nerve supply. All the muscles, they are supplied by hypoglossal nerve except, okay, except the palatoglossus. And when we talk about the sensory supply, the anterior two-third supplied by lingual nerve for general sensation, chorda tympani for taste sensation. Then as we come to the posterior one-third plus the circumflex papillae, for both taste and the general sensation is by glossopharyngeal nerve. And for the posterior most part, it is again both taste and the general sensation is by the vagus nerve and its specific branch, internal laryngeal nerve. And when we are talking about the hypoglossal nerve injury, the tongue will deviate to which side? The tongue will deviate to the side of the lesion. Okay, it will deviate to the side of the lesion because the overactive muscles of the other side, they will push the tongue. Okay, they will push the tongue. So that is why the tongue will deviate. Remember, it will deviate to the side of lesion. Good morning, Afreen. Okay, so good morning, Sada. So next over here, we will be talking about the nasal cavity. And if you see this sagittal section, okay, you should be knowing this sagittal section. This is the sagittal section of the head and neck. And when we see this sagittal section of head and neck, you should be able to identify these basic things. Like if I see over here, this is the this is the hard palate, right? This is the hard palate, and just posterior to it, you have this soft palate. This structure is soft palate. This is very easy to understand. Then towards the upper side over here, this is the base of the skull, and in the base of the skull, this is the sphenoid bone over here, and within the sphenoid bone, you can see sphenoid sinus. Okay, this is the sphenoid sinus, which is within it. Now, above the hard palate, we know the nasal cavity is present. This is the nasal cavity. This is the oral cavity. In the oral cavity, you are having this structured tongue. And in the nasal cavity, I will just come to the nasal cavity. Now, as we go backwards, we say behind the oral and the nasal cavity, you are having pharynx. Okay, so this region which is present over here, to be more specific, this region which is present over here, this is the whole pharynx, and the portion which is behind the nasal cavity, this portion is nasopharynx. Just below that, this portion behind the oral cavity is the oropharynx, and the portion which is behind the larynx is laryngopharynx. So these are the three portions. In this, an important structure is here. In the nasopharynx, there is an opening of the auditory tube. Okay, the auditory tube, it is opening over here in the nasopharynx. The auditory tube, what is it doing? It is actually communicating between the middle ear cavity and the nasopharynx. This is to maintain the air pressure. As the air pressure of the external environment changes, so accordingly, it will be maintaining that air change in the ear also. Now, as we come lower down, you can see over here, this portion is the larynx. This is the larynx portion. And just above the larynx portion, this component over here, this is the epiglottis. This is the epiglottis. Now coming to the nasal cavity, I will focus it more. In the nasal cavity, can you see these projections kind of thing? Okay, can you see these projections? What are these projections? These projections, they are given the term as concha, or it is termed as turbinates. Okay, concha or turbinates. These are the projections which are coming from the lateral wall of nasal cavity. Now when you see the nasal cavity, it is like this. So when you see it from in here, it is like this. In the center, you are having nasal septum, and towards the lateral side, you are having this lateral wall. In the lateral wall, you are having these projections, these three projections, which are given the term as a concha or turbinates. Just give me a second over here. Okay, now when we are talking about the nasal cavity over here, the voice is very low, Atufa. Okay. I will just take the voice. Give me 1 second. I will just take the voice. Hello. I think it must be better now. Is the voice better now? Okay, you can just tell me if the voice is better now or not. From my side, it will be. I hope that the voice is better now. So now talking about, we have started with the nasal cavity. We have started with the nasal cavity. In this, I've just introduced you that if I say this is the nasal cavity, then in the center you are having over here the nasal septum. Okay, this is the nasal septum. This is a very basic thing, and this is the lateral wall. This is the lateral wall of nasal cavity. Now from the lateral wall of the nasal cavity, okay, that's great, Afreen. So now from the lateral wall of the nasal cavity, we say that these are the three projections. Okay, these are the three projections over here, and these three projections, these are actually given the term as, concha, or it is also termed as turbinates. It is also termed as turbinates. And these are superior, inferior, and middle. Superior, middle, and inferior turbinates. Okay, so this is a very basic thing over here regarding the whole nasal cavity, and we have just seen the concha and the turbinates. Now, first of all, we will be talking about the nasal septum. Okay, first of all, we will be talking about the nasal septum. After that, we will move on to the lateral wall. So now coming to the nasal septum, first of all, let us see the nasal septum. The nasal septum means, like, we will be talking about this central structure, okay, which is dividing the nasal cavity. Now when we see the nasal septum, now what are the structures, what are the bones, or what are the structures which are forming the nasal septum? So this is the picture showing the nasal septum, and when we are talking about it, we say on the anterior aspect it is made up of cartilages, and on the posterior aspect it is made up of the bones. Okay, now in this nasal cartilage over here, in this nasal septum over here, this anterior portion, this is made up of cartilage. This is made up of cartilage. So we use the term as septal cartilage. Okay, it is made up of septal cartilage, and towards the posterior side, now over here you are having one bone. This is a bone coming from above. This is perpendicular plate of ethmoid bone. Okay, this is a perpendicular plate of ethmoid bone, and towards the lower side you are having this bone over here, which is given the term as vomer. So these are the main bones. These are the main bones which are forming the nasal septum. These are the main bony projections. So ethmoid and vomer. And apart from this, we say